Hello Math 45 students, this is your instructor Cindy Enrique, and today we'll be going over Chapter 2. In particular, Section 2.1, the rectangular coordinate systems and graphs. So here we talk about the XY graph. We have our different quadrants. So our quadrants here is quadrants 1, quadrants 2, quadrants 3, and quadrants 4. Notice how those are in Roman numerals, okay? And so what we do when we graph a point is we do the x and then we do the y. So this point 3, -1, where x is equal to 3 and my y is equal to -1. So here, if I go over to the x value, I go over to 3 and I go down to -1, and that is your point at 3, -1, right in there, okay? All right, so now it says, hey, graph these points. So you're just like, okay, well, if I have -2, 4, that means the x value is -2 and the y value is +4. So that point right there would represent -2, 4. Now, the next point, it looks like it's 3, 5. So on the x value, we go over to +3. And on the y value, we go up to +5. So that would be my value, 3, 5. And now we have 0, -3. That means the x is 0. So you're right in the center. And if it's -3, then you go down to -3. So that would be the point 0, -3. And if I want, I can go ahead and label. It's not necessary, but you can. That way you're just aware of what the order pairs are that you just drew. Okay. All right. So let's go down to the next page. So here, this is where your TI-84 CE Plus calculator comes into play. We're just getting comfortable with the screen. That's all we're doing. So we want to make sure that we're able to kind of change the window, because sometimes that's going to be very helpful if you change the window. So looking at that first one, number 1, it says resolution. I want to have my window to have these different specifications. So this is what you're going to be writing off for your window on your calculator so you can see it. So if I bring up the calculator, here it is. And we are going to bring up the window. So what you do is you go to the window and you're going to change it. So notice how it says x min. That is your minimum value for your x. So I'm going to write in -60. And down below it says x max, which you might guess is your maximum value for your x. So that's going to be +60. I'm just following what it has on my paper. And the scale is 1. That means you wanted to count by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So you're counting by ones. And your y min, as indicated on your paper, it says -40. So -40. And the maximum y value is 40. And again, the scale for y is 1. So you're counting by ones. So when you go back to graph, you see that the axes are very thick. That's showing you that you're seeing it from -60 to +60 for your x values, and then for your y values you have your minimum from -40 to +40. Okay, so that was just to make sure that we know how to kind of use our graphing calculator. So now for part B, I'm just going to move my calculator over to the other side. Now we want to change the scale, so now it counts by the scale as 10. So now we're going to be counting by 10. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, right? So I'm going to go back to my window. And that scale for x, I'm going to go by 10. And for my y scale, it says also by 10. So notice how your range is still the same. Your x min and x max is still at -60 and 60. And your minimum and maximum value for your y's is still -40 and 40. The only difference is that the scaling is different. The scale is now that you're counting by tens. So when I press graph, I can see that the tick marks aren't so many, right? There should be only about 6 because you're counting by 10. So 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. So that is just something that's helpful to make sure that you guys are comfortable using your graphing calculator. Okay, thank you very much. Now we're going to go into the distance formula. So what the distance formula does is it finds the distance between 2 points in the plane. So let's say graphically, if you're like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. Well, if you're thinking about it visually, so here's my xy coordinate plane. If I have some point over here, let's call that A, point A, and I have another point over here, let's call that point B. Then the distance formula, what that does is it calculates the distance between A to B. So I want to see how far away A is from B, okay? So we can do that by using the distance formula. So here we are going to have the square root of the difference of the x value squared plus the difference of the y value squared. So I'm going to follow this formula. So I'm going to go ahead and copy it down. So I know that my distance is going to be the x coordinate minus the other x coordinate squared plus the y coordinate minus the other y coordinate squared. And I'm going to square root the entire thing. So now I'm going to go ahead and attempt to do this. So what might be helpful is to actually label your points. So I have my x1 and my y1. And over here I have my x2 and my y2. Okay. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and put in my parentheses squared plus my parentheses squared. And it's going to be square rooted. Okay. Actually, let's go ahead and make that a little bit nicer. We have enough room. I'm squishing up my work. Here we go. Okay, so now that it's more spread out. Now that I have kind of my outline going on, now I can just plug in my values. So my x2 value was a positive 2, and it's being subtracted by my x1, and the x1 value I have a negative 3. Now I go over to the next set of parentheses. I have my y2. My y2 is a positive 3, and it's subtraction. And now my y2 value, or sorry, my y1 value is going to be that negative 1. So before I can square it, I'm going to have to go ahead and simplify the inside of these parentheses. So then here I have 2 minus negative 3. So if I put it into my calculator, or just think of it as, oh, it's a double subtraction. Subtract a negative number turns into addition. So I'm going to have 2 plus 3, which is a 5. Same thing, 3 minus negative 1, I can plug it into my calculator, or I can think of it, oh, it's going to turn into addition, so that's going to be a 4. So now I have that this is going to be 25, because 5 times 5, 5 squared is 25, and 4 squared, 4 times 4 is 16. And so 25 plus 16 gives me a 41. So my answer here is going to be the square root of 41. That is going to be the distance between those 2 points. Okay, now, maybe you don't want to know the distance between point A and point B. Maybe instead you want to know, hey, what's going to be the halfway point? So I know for myself, sometimes, driving, I have to drive, a lot in the LA County, Orange County. So right now, let's say I'm in Long Beach. I'm over here. Let me rewrite that. So maybe over here, I'm in Long Beach, okay? That's going to be my point A, all right? So then my point B, let's say that's going to be, I don't know, let's say that's going to be San Diego. So let's say I want to drop off, I don't know, my kid. I want to drop my kid off to his grandparents in San Diego. But I don't want to drive all the way to San Diego. So his grandparents say, hey, Cindy, I will meet you halfway. So then I need to figure out what is the halfway point between Long Beach and San Diego. So from point A to point B, what would be the midpoint? What would be the middle point where his grandparents and myself will meet exactly in the middle so that way they can get to see their grandson? Well, as a mathematician, I can do that. What I can do is I can use the midpoint formula to figure that out, okay? So here is my formula, x1 plus x2 divided by 2. So whenever you're taking an average, you just divide by however many things you are adding. So I'm adding two things together, so I divide by 2. I'm adding my two y's together, so I divide by 2. So that tells me that I can calculate my x coordinate and I'll be able to calculate my y coordinate as well. So let's go ahead and label this. That seems to help us. So x1 and y1, and we have our x2 and my y2. So I'm going to plug it into this formula. I know that I have x1 plus x2 divided by 2 and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Well, for my x values then, it looks like I have my x1 as 7. Now I'm going to add to it my other x2 value, which happens to be 9, and I'm dividing by 2. Now for my y values, my y1 value is -2. And my y2 value is a +5. And I'm still dividing by 2 since I'm dividing by 2. So then on my calculator, I'm going to go ahead and do 7 plus 9, or 7 plus 9. 7 plus 9 is 16. 16 divided by 2 is 8. -2 plus 5, or you can think of it as a +5 and a -2 then combining together. So that's going to be a +3, and my denominator is a 2. So therefore, I have my x and my y value. So the midpoint way would be 8, 3/2. Okay. So now we're going to be using one of the formulas to help us with this word problem. It says the diameter of a circle has endpoints. -1, -4, and 5, -4. Find the center of the circle. So we have to find the center of the circle. So you're like, okay, well, what shape is this? Well, the shape is a circle. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of drawing this on my notepad, so it might not be looking very nice, but for the most part, oh, actually, maybe I can do a circle this way. Oh, okay, there we go. So there is my very nice circle. Perfect, okay? So there's my circle. And I know that if I'm trying to find the center, the center would be right smack in the middle, okay? So I know that one point over here, let's say that's going to be my -1, -4. That's going to be my first point. Let's call that point A. And then my point B would be that 5, -4, B. Okay. And so if you think about this, you have on one end of the circle, -1, -4, and on the opposite side, you have 5, -4. So what would be the center of the circle? Well, it would be the midpoint, okay? So in this particular case, we have that the midpoint is equal to the center of the circle. That is what is happening in this diagram. So you're just like, okay, perfect. Then now I know what formula I'm going to be using. I know that the midpoint formula is such that I add my two x's together and I divide by 2. And then I add my y values together and I divide by 2. So I already did this in my previous example, so I think I'm capable of doing this again. And I know I'm dividing by 2 on each. So now I just plug in my values. So I have my x1, my y1, and I have my x2 and my y2. So my x1 value is a -1, and it's being added to my x2 value, which is a +5. Now I'm going to deal with my second fraction, my y values. So I have a -4 plus my y2 value, which is a -4. So now I have this as a -1 plus 5, so 4 divided by 2. And -4 plus -4, you get deeper in the negative, so it's -8 divided by 2. And of course, you can simplify this. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and -8 divided by 2 is a -4. So now I have found my center. So that would be the center of the circle, and I was able to do that by drawing it out and finding the midpoint. Okay, well that is the end of section 2.1. If you guys have any questions or comments or concerns, please feel free to email me. Okay, see you guys later.